Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around and we're going to introduce our esteemed panel, as always, starting with my co-worker who tends to leave me and have fun in the sun, but I think he brought the rain yesterday, and that's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Doug?
Hey, Nikki, I was not racing in the rain yesterday, and I'd be racing in the rain today if I went outside. But you're right. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs and then joined the congressman in his office for 2 years and learned an awful lot. And I'm here to answer your questions as best I can.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much to the man who says I threaten him to be here every Monday night, but he tends to always be on time. That's our physician by day and farmer by evening, our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller?
Oh, thank you so much, Nikki. And speaking of the rain, I really appreciate it. Without rain, there's a lot of watering that needs to be done. So God spared me and sent the rain yesterday, so I didn't have to water today. But I'm happy to be here on this forum and to be able to discuss some of the issues in our community. I'm a retired internist, retired in 2019, but still trying to do what I can to heal our community. And man, there's so much to heal. Nikki was just telling us about some of the disappointment that she recently experienced. Disappointment is just seemed to be abounding all around. I recently, this is I've been going through my family's been going through a big funeral parade that we've over the past 10 days. There've been 4 funerals that we've attended, 2 homicide and 2 natural deaths. So it's difficult, but we all got to figure out how we can make it and what we can do to try to sustain and try to overcome some of these difficulties that we have to face on this journey. But we're gonna make it. It's gonna be all right. So we're here tonight to discuss the issues that are of concern in our community and to see what we can do to help to add some positive spin to it.
Outstanding. Well, as you know, God is a way maker, and he will definitely make a way. I would feel some kind of way when things would be happening, and and even now today, when there's an abundance of things happening and I really can't understand or get a hold on it, I remember what my dad would always say to me. He would say, God ain't gonna put no more on you than you can bear. And if you get tired, just hang in there. And if you feel like you sliding off the rope when you're hanging in there, he would say, tie a knot in the end of the rope and just dangle till your help come to pull you up. So here's your help. We're going to pull you on up and get you on out of there because God is a way maker. I want to say hey to Connie Taylor, who is here. She says, good evening, everybody. To Yolanda Williams, who's here with us, good evening. She says, good evening to all. To Sister Bonnie, who is here, she says, good evening. Sister Bonnie, I'm going to call you as soon as this broadcast is over because I need you to do some damage control for me from yesterday. So please stay up. Don't go to sleep. Well, to the man who is a DJ by night and physician by day, that's an HIV specialist and internist he is. That's our very own Dr. Bonnie P. Dr. P.
Nikki, I'm happy to be here. Grateful for this opportunity to share with the community. Also grateful to share this panel with my esteemed colleagues, and very happy about yourself and Congressman Davis for creating this forum so that the community can be healthier, wiser, and make some good decisions.
Outstanding. Want to say hey to my good friend Flo Strong, who is here with us, and everyone over at the VA who is watching. Thank you so very much, and good day to you, Flo, as you say to us, good day. Nellie Purnell King is here, and she says, good evening to everyone. Well, to the doctor that's known on these streets as Dr. 100, that is, because she keeps it real, our very own internist and HIV specialist, Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Maya.
Dr. Maya. So, hey, everybody, to my internist, Dr. Pete and Dr. Miller, and internist too, and is it rheumatologist?
Rheumatologist.
Dr. Graham. Rheumatologist. I'm going to say I'm family medicine. Hey, everybody makes a joke.
Nikki, I knew she was going to correct that.
I know how we do West Side, South Side. medicine. You know, everybody say family medicine, we're generalists, but I like to say we're not partialists. You see what I'm saying? Keeping it 100 to all my internal love y'all. And but anyway, I'm so excited. Monday is a great day to kick off any kind of collaboration with our community, and that's why I'm excited about, Nikki, what you put together and what the congressman has put together. Opportunity every Monday for us to connect through community, with community. We're from community and we're for community. I'm excited about the talk we're going to have tonight. So let's get started into. Yeah.
Outstanding. I want to say hey to Diamond Hayes. Hey, Diamond, how are you? She says hello there from her family at Life is Work. Hey, Diamond, good to see you here with us, girl. Thank you for stopping by. Of course, you know that July is HIV and Hepatitis Stigma Month. So we want to talk about that. But our conversation was so hot last week with our guest. It was boiling over. Did not know that you guys wanted to talk about syphilis just that much, but I wanted to make sure that we put it out here on the floor so we can help heal our communities. So we want to say hey to my good friend AV, that's Antonio King from the Chicago Department of Public Health. And he's going to we're going to continue to spearhead our part 2 because you guys demanded it. And as I always do, I try to give you your demands. You demanded a part 2 on syphilis and chlamydia and all of the STIs that are out here so we can keep ourselves safe. I want to say hey to Linda Robinson, who is here with us. She says, good evening to everyone. So good evening, Lyndon. Of course, AV, that's Antonio King, works for the Chicago Department of Public Health during the day, but at night, he tries to say that he is an outstanding old school antique movie buff. I don't know. How's the popcorn? Got to be movie theater popcorn, that is. Go right ahead, Antonio.
Is that what I said?
That's what you said. Well, you don't want me to tell the other thing you said.
No. Good evening, everyone. Yes, Antonio King, Chicago Department of Public Health. I'm a public health administrator. I've been with the Chicago Department of Public Health for 19 years. I'm in my 20th year in October. Hey, yay me. And I was a disease intervention specialist, and then I was a supervisor, and now I am a public health administrator, as well as the LGBTQ health and outreach liaison for the Chicago Department of Public Health, and actually for the entire city. And I'm the first Black man to hold that position. So, and I'm more than happy to be here. Last week was really a little eye-opening. It was exciting, but I didn't realize how many people were listening and watching until after the show. But I'm glad that you asked me back for the topic, and I hope that I can contribute something to these wonderful, esteemed individuals. I can support them, I should say, in contributing to the dialogue.
Outstanding. Well, the congressman will be running a little late tonight. He is on the floor voting, but he wanted to tell you all good day, and that as soon as he's done voting, he's going to try. He's going to try to get here. Well, AV, I got a question. So
you keep calling me AV. Everybody calls me AV from my social media, and you know my name. Why? That's so amazing to me. I'm going with it. I make a note of that. I'm AV. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who AV was.
Right. So on social media, my social, not social media.
That's his nickname.
Oh,
he's just trying to act like that's his social media name.
He's trying to act proper with us.
No.
That's Antonio's nickname.
I don't use Antonio because I didn't want like high school people to find me and stuff like that. So I just go by AV King on social media.
That's his nickname. That's his nickname.
We'll go with that. Okay.
We've been calling him that since we've known him, and now
yes,
Mr. King.
No, don't you dare, Mr. King me. No, go AV. We'll go.
So Antonio.
AV. Yes, ma'am.
Of course, we know that during COVID, that a lot of these statistics went up, but they went unnoticed. Once again, we want to make sure that we're not putting Band-Aids over wounds. I know Dr. Mason had a little conversation with you in reference to sharing the statistics of how numbers actually grew. If you can share how numbers in syphilis actually grew over our city in that time span of doing COVID, because we understand that people were wearing masks, but not condoms. And if you can also share, exactly how many children lately, which it has actually 300% in reference to our children who have been born with syphilis.
Okay, what I'm gonna, yes, ma'am, I will follow directive. I will follow that Black woman's directive, yes, ma'am. But I'm gonna start it off with, I know you love that, Maya, but I'm gonna
That part,
start it off
that
with, yeah, but I'm gonna start off with the first off, I want to say when you're looking at statistics, and I'm sure the doctors here can help me support that as well. What happens with statistics, I'll be giving statistics from 2022 because we take statistics in 1 year and it takes an entire year to actually process the data, clean the data up, and really categorize the data. So we're in 2024. It took 2023 for them to actually analyze the 2022 data. And that was a result of activity after COVID. We did notice that COVID was supposed to be having people shelter in place, but people were not totally sheltering in place alone. The dating apps were very active. And after a while, people began to venture out of their homes or invite others into their home. So in 2022, we had over 1 million new syphilis chlamydia cases. And that was an increase of 1.8% up from 2021. There was a decrease of gonorrhea and chlamydia. Go figure. Chlamydia went up and gonorrhea went down by 9%. Overall, this is nationwide, and I say that because of your vast reach of the listeners and viewers of this particular platform. Now, syphilis went up. We have over 200,000 cases that were reported to the CDC, and this is on the CDC surveillance report. And there was an increase of 17.39% since 2021. That's overall. When you're looking at Chicago, and this is Chicago, not Cook County. This is the city of Chicago, because this is found at the Chicago Department of Public Health syphilis data brief. And that is online. I can also put that clip in the that link in the chat once I'm done with this. But a lot of things went up. We had in 2022, we had over 806 primary and secondary syphilis cases. And that was an increase of 1.5% from 2021. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of primary and secondary cases of syphilis. And we did not have the staff either at the city level or the Cook County level to actually have disease intervention specialists to go out to do contact tracing, what we call contact tracing. And I think people became very familiar with contact tracing during COVID-19. Someone's calling you, asking you who have you been in contact with, that kind of thing. That's the model that we use for syphilis. Someone will contact anyone who has been diagnosed with a primary or secondary case of syphilis by a provider, and that's by a provider, and they will contact them to talk about who were your partners, where were you having sex, when did you meet this person, because we want to designate the diagnosis correctly so that you can be treated correctly. Is it a primary or secondary case of syphilis? And those were up in 2022 by 1.5%. There was a decrease among those who identified as women. And we state that stipulation because these are individuals who are women and say they are women. I don't know how the other ways to put it. The world we live in today. People want to be identified. And these are people who identified as women. And the doctor confirmed that these individuals were assigned female at birth. So that's the data on these. And there was a decrease of almost 11% among women from 2021. 46 cases were reported. I know that you wanted to know this, and this is the most heartbreaking part. There were 46 cases of reported congenital syphilis, and congenital syphilis is syphilis that is diagnosed in babies or in infants. So that's an increase of over 5 years. That's the highest increase we've had since 2018. 46 cases, because one is too many. Now, Dr. Irina with the Chicago Department of Public Health, she's always been an advocate for ensuring that no child is born with syphilis, congenital syphilis. So one case, if we used to get up in arms with 1 or 2 cases. Imagine what this is like with 46 cases. And that's very layered. And I'm sure that once we begin talking, that's layered, meaning some of those women did not have prenatal. They didn't know they were pregnant. And by the time they got to prenatal, they did not understand what was happening to them. And by then the baby was delivered with congenital syphilis. We're talking women of childbearing age. And that age is anywhere from teens into 30-something, 36 or 37, I believe, where they are considered childbearing age. And it's important that we get to those individuals for treatment, for intervention with their partners and to ensure that the baby can be treated and not born with congenital syphilis. I know that was a lot.
No, we thank you. So we want to make sure that everything is open to questions. If anyone has any questions, please type them. I do have a few anonymous questions, but we also want to have our esteemed doctors begin to share just as well. So thank you so very much for that. But Antonio, did you say that I was not of childbearing age? I think I missed something that
No.
you
I'm a black man in America. I know better than to say something like that. I did not say that.
Dr. Miller gonna tell you that I'm of childbearing age.
I said that between the teens and up to like 36 or 37, those are childbearing ages that we are really concerned about. We're really concerned about those individuals. Now you got me stumbling over words, but those are the ones that we're really concerned about. We want to make sure that we get to in a quick and emergency, urgent fashion. You can still be a childbearing age after that. You can have as many babies as you want. Go right ahead, my sister. Yes, ma'am. I endorse that for you. I want that for you. I'm happy for you with that.
Dr. P, go right ahead.
Yeah, save me, Dr. P.
No, well, I was just going to say, just in terms of in clinical practice, what we're seeing is today we're seeing increasing rates of both of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. I think people are still maintaining the principle of not wearing condoms. I'm not sure if people have this sort of memory lapse that everyone's not very forthcoming about their sexual practices and how many partners. And I think it's pretty universally true that in America, we kind of have these sort of stigma about people who are taking PrEP. And PrEP is a medication that prevents HIV, but does not prevent other sexually transmitted infections. And so while we're seeing increasing rates of people that are on PrEP, right? So the CDC reported the highest rate of people on PrEP that should be on PrEP at 35%. Now, that's up from 18%, but that's only the medication that prevents HIV. But we also have a medication called doxypep that helps patients prevent syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia at various rates, right? So just want to make sure that people know, one, be very inquisitive about your sexual partners and be open and honest about the discussion way before things get hot and heavy. And I would say sorry about that. And I would just say be very frank about the idea that it's very well possible that you're potentially exposing yourself to a STI. And don't forget, you can ask your doctor for something called doxypep. It's a medication called doxycycline, and you take it after you have a sexual experience where you think you may have been exposed to either gonorrhea, chlamydia, or syphilis.
Question: in terms of we understand the rates. Is there a difference in the number of people in different age group that we're seeing and with this increase in infection?
There is. I did not document that, but there is, especially with chlamydia. That increase of chlamydia is still, to my recollection, is still among teenagers and young adults. And I think that for those who may have practiced before, you know that high schoolers during that period of time, those are the ones who were always contracting the highest rate of chlamydia and gonorrhea. So the increase that we're seeing in chlamydia is yet among those individuals between teenagers, youth, and young adults. Because that's being reported in the schools.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things then, this is a few years back. I don't know if this is still the trend or not, but in some of the older, especially males, um, nursing homes and senior homes, there was a significant high level of especially gonorrhea and syphilis. Because of men having sex with having unprotected sex, and often with partners that they had not were not didn't know often, and so there was a sudden increase in that age group, especially men over the ages of 65, and especially in men that were in a lot of these senior citizen homes. I don't know if we're categorizing some of these in terms of where people live, um, because the thing is that oftentimes, as you said, people are not don't report, who it is that they're having sex with, for many different reasons. But one of the big thing that we were seeing in some of the older men is that they basically were not having their reason for having relationship with women were mainly just for sex, and so their concern apparently for other people and for just for other things were a little bit less, and they were mainly concerned with satisfying their sexual desires. So that in itself was a big process in terms of the increase in terms of those disease during that period. I don't know if that trend has slowed or not.
Well, no, you're absolutely correct. What happened was, and I was a part of the task force that actually had not discovered, but it was working a couple of nursing homes. What happens is they're diagnosed and they're treated by the provider, and the provider doesn't always necessarily give the information that these patients are in a nursing home or they're in a residential, a supported residential place, until we start inquiring, like, wait, how many of your patients? He said, oh, those are the patients I saw at the nursing home. And then we're looking into that. So, and you're right. And I'll just say it a little more, you've said it very eloquently, but they're having sex. One, we had an advent of Viagra came on the scene, and a lot of men were just amazed, and they were glad to be able to do what they can do the way they could do it before, at the length of time that they could do it. And you have individuals who were commercial sex workers who were there every month or whenever the men wanted to call to service them. Although there was one case, there were many cases where they were using condoms actually, but with syphilis, as we may or may not know, our viewership, syphilis can be contracted just from contact with someone. If you're naked and we do we're rubbing and grind and you're rubbing each other, you can contract syphilis if there is an open sore or if there's a symptom there, be it a rash or be it the chancre. So they're not thinking that I can catch. They're thinking HIV, they're thinking gonorrhea, chlamydia, and we've got condoms. So education is important, and as the technology increases to allow us to do things that we can do well into our 70s, 80s, and hopefully our 90s, we have to continue to do education and not be afraid to take that information to those individuals in the places, meeting them where they are. I think we all know that we meet them where they are.
So, Antonio, we do have a question, and to our physicians who are on the line as well. The question says, and basically I think you answered it, but if you can just go over it again kind of slowly, and Dr. Miller can probably back you up, or either Dr. Graham. The question says, how do you contract syphilis? I got syphilis, but I had no penetration sex. So
I did cover that, so I'm going to let a doctor.
So I just want you to repeat it, but do it slower. But then
I talk fast. Is that what you're saying?
And when you do share that answer, here's what I'm going to ask. If you can share with our viewers that includes oral sex as well.
Gotcha. So one, in order for syphilis, and in STI is sexually transmitted infection. One person has to come in contact with a symptom of syphilis, and in those cases, it has to be primary or secondary syphilis. And I'm just going to preface it a little, and then I'm going to ask one of the other doctors to take it over, because Maya and Dr. Miller, you guys very well at breaking down the information in a pace that I probably get excited about as a disease intervention specialist. So if you are performing oral sex on someone, if you are performing, you're bumping and grinding nude, these are ways that you can contract syphilis if there is a symptom present. If there is a sore present on that person's penis, or on that person's vagina, or on that person's rectum or anus, you can contract syphilis. I mean, because let's just be frank, when we're doing oral sex, maybe that's not your thing, but everybody enjoys something. They enjoy being touched. If I have a sore on my tongue and I perform oral sex or kiss you, that allows you to be exposed to syphilis. That's an open sore. That is a symptom. And I'm going to leave it right there because I think I gave a good little leeway for you guys to come right on in and just take it over.
Yeah, you certainly did. I mean, oftentimes people, will say, no, I'm not sexually active, and they just simply, most of them, when they say that, if they are sexually active, mean that, well, I'm not really involved in a genital kind of relationship with anybody where there's penile vaginal penetration, but that process of once we become involved and become engaged with someone and touching, feeling, whatever it is that we have the ability to transfer, either we're talking about syphilis, any kind of wound that we have that we touch somebody else, either it touch their genitals, touch their mouth, then we have the ability to transfer that disease to the other person. And so in sex, sometimes there's a lot of different things that are involved, and it's not all, we talk about the gentleness, we talk about the, but there's some roughness also involved sometimes, depending on the individuals. And in that, sometimes injury does occur. And with that injury, you also open up the possibility of transferring diseases that otherwise, without the injury, would probably not be transmitted. So all those things have to be considered when you're involved, and you have to consider what it is that you're doing, what it is that other person has. And so when we begin to look and to try to figure out who it is we're having sex with and what their situation is, we don't always understand or know everything without really either the person having been tested or being able to observe that person doesn't have any lesions in their mouth if they're going to do oral sex, or in their, depending on what portions of their body that you're coming in contact with.
Foreplay was the word I was looking for. There we go.
So a couple. Go ahead.
No, I was about to tell you were muted. So go ahead.
So a couple of things. I mean, just like Antonio and Dr. Miller said, syphilis, a lot of times when it's sexually transmitted, it's a contact sport, okay? And so it's going to be anywhere that contact happens, right? Syphilis is the bacteria. And we learned, like, when you think of COVID, any kind of HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia, any kind of infection of any kind, the infection wants to do two things: stay alive long enough to move to the next person, right? It's like those movies you see where it's trying to move on around to the next host, some kind of zombie. And it wants to make an impact on the host it has, whether eventually it's going to transition off and then cause the host to have this like autoimmune thing, or whether it kind of dies off, or whether it smolders and waits for you to get weakened and come back out like surprise, okay, like that. So syphilis is a contact sport when it's sexually transmitted. Anywhere you're having that contact, anywhere with that that one body touches another, that's how it's getting transmitted, number one. Number two, the other way you can get syphilis, Nikki or Antonio mentioned earlier, is mother to baby, right? So what do we do well, I know if I'm sexually active and I have syphilis, I go get treatment. I am not going to have sex during the time where I'm on treatment. I'm going to wait till about 7 days after. And if I'm having sex and I find out someone had syphilis, I'm gonna do what Dr. Pete said. I'm immediately go, right? Because I got 3 days. I'm immediately go get some coverage. But that first day, that first hour, so if they say 72 hours, they say 3 days. The first hour and the 72nd hour are not the same. They are not like us, right? So I want to get it the first hour, that treatment in me. That's it. Now, mother to baby, right? What can I do if I'm pregnant and I want to find out if I have syphilis? As a matter of fact, every pregnant person is supposed to get screened for syphilis when I first find out I'm pregnant. That's number one. Then the guidelines say test in my last trimester. Depending on the prevalence, I'm also test when I'm getting ready to give birth, right? Because baby can get syphilis from mommy while you're still in the stomach or passing through the canal, right? So at the actual time of birth or while you're still in the stomach. So I'm going to get tested and treated if that. And if I'm pregnant and I find out my partner has syphilis, I don't wait for that 3rd trimester test. I go get tested and screened and talk to my doctor about whether or not I'm going to just take some prophylactic medicine before, right when I find out my partner had it. And also when I have new partners. So how are we getting it? Contact sport, sexually active, or mother to baby while the pregnancy is going on, or at the point where I'm giving birth through the vaginal canal.
Dr. Maya, we have a question that says, can syphilis be transferred through breast milk? And also, will the treatment for syphilis harm the unborn baby?
I've never heard of syphilis being transferred through breast milk, but syphilis is contact. So if I have a lesion for some reason, if mommy, I'm assuming I'm mommy, because I'm not a baby, right? If I have a lesion on my breast and then I put that baby on my breast, then I'm going to transmit it. But I haven't heard anything. I don't know about the other doctors of breast milk itself transmitting syphilis. There's some quiet time right now. So the other thing I want to mention is in 2022, people that were 20 to 29 years were the most frequently diagnosed with syphilis. 20 to 29. Did I say 20? Yeah, 20 to 29. I don't know if I said 2022, but in 2022, people 20 to 29 most often diagnosed with syphilis. After that was 30 to 39.
Dr. Maya, I think the second part of the question was, will the treatment given to mother harm the baby?
Oh, no. I'm sorry, I missed that part. Thank you.
Okay. So, bicillin shortage. Let's talk about that really quickly, and then I want to talk about us removing the stigma of HIV and hepatitis. What do we do about our bicillin shortage? Or is there really a bicillin shortage?
Nikki, you know me so well. I don't know how these shortages come up except people get to charge extra money for them. I don't know how. I don't know. So that's why I'm like, I was, I'm like, I said I wasn't gonna say nothing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you and Pete, come on.
Yeah, we only can report what the CDC tells us, and to Dr. Maya's point, sometimes it doesn't make sense to us from a common practice perspective. And part of what the CDC does is to anticipate trends, right? So the idea that you're anticipating a trend of higher rates of various infections, and if syphilis is one of those, the idea that a company did not understand that they need to ramp up production as a result of increasing rates doesn't make common sense, but as my mom used to say, common sense ain't so common.
Well, I'm going to jump in as a government entity.
Yeah.
So
be careful now, Antonio. Be very careful now. You got to go to work tomorrow. Now go ahead.
Right. Well, I'm supporting us. So what had happened was, remember during COVID, what had happened was during COVID, companies shut down. So there wasn't any processing going or producing going on by pharmaceutical companies at the time. After post-COVID, people go back to work. We find out that there is an unusual surge in syphilis cases. So the bacillin that is stored is begun to get out, and they do have some put away. They're like anticipating, as Dr. P said, they're anticipating trends. So we want to hold some of this back so that when this trend happens, when the next surge comes, we've got enough for it. Well, when that did happen, there wasn't enough being produced again. So actually, there was an anticipated shortage, and in that they began to say, so prescribe something else, and we will come up with more bicillin. So it was a way to protect us and a way to ensure that we did have enough to go around, as the CDC saw that this trend was happening, and that we've got like record rates of syphilis throughout the country, across the country.
Yeah, what's interesting in having worked in public health, that actually all those reports go to the state, and the state send them to the federal government, to the CDC. So it takes time for all that data to get there and all that data to be analyzed. But what we're really talking about is demand went down, so the supply went down to adjust to the lower demand. And once the supply is low, it's low. But you're not expecting this sharp spike. And so one of the things that we can talk about before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So this is one of the things that we see. Syphilis went down probably because of COVID in some respects, because people were distancing themselves, people were more careful about what they were doing. But then after COVID seemed to go away, because we still got COVID. Don't forget, we still got COVID. COVID hasn't gone anywhere, just like syphilis didn't go anywhere. So we still have COVID. So once that behavior change, it started to go up, and now there's a new trend going up. And I would defer to Antonio. It hasn't spiked yet. It hasn't peaked, because that's another thing. You'll look for it to get to a certain point, and then you expect it to go down, or you hope it go down. But it may be going up, and it may not have peaked yet to what it was before COVID.
And the other thing, Doc, is so during COVID, the demand didn't go down. The reporting went down. There was no reporting going on.
Yes.
They were sheltering together, having lots of sex, and there was no reporting going on, which is why coming out of this post-COVID, we see such a large amount of I think there's some neurosyphilis that have been found out because it went untreated, undetected, undiagnosed. So,
and is it possible that people with syphilis didn't know they had syphilis and gave it to some?
Absolutely.
So there's this whole snowball effect.
And then to add insult to injury to all of what we're saying, there are people who had syphilis, who had been treated, and then became reactivated. But of course, this is during the time when we were being distant. You can't come in for testing. So now no one knew that RPR that was 1 to 2 now is 1 to 64.
Right.
You see, so no one knew because the person couldn't come in to get so this was like a vicious cycle happening where the disconnect and not having access to testing and treatment just became a scenario where the rates were it was just a natural phenomenon. But I think it all boils down to what Dr. Meyer said. It was a reason for somebody to go up on the price.
It was a perfect infectious storm.
For business, it was an opportunity.
Yes, for business opportunity. Right. And unfortunately, medicine is a business. We don't talk about it like that, but medicine is the business.
So speaking of opportunity, it reminds me of something I talk a lot with people about, is taking the opportunity to understand how our humanness, I guess, works, how we work as humans, right? There are billions of people on the planet, and that's because there's a lot of sex going on, okay? And it's by design. Again, I always say when these sex talks come up, part of the thing that a lot of people, don't acknowledge is we're wired to have sex in order to keep the human race from being extinct. Don't argue with me, argue with science. I ain't for it, okay? And so, just like your parents wasn't for it, that's why you here. And so, what we can do is take those opportunities to understand ourselves and find how we can have the sex we want for the rest of our life, right? And so that includes me, knowing all kinds of statuses, my sexual health status, things like that. My mental health status, that's important, spiritual health, when you're, moving in that direction, right? But also, I want to know my partner status. Do they have syphilis, right? Because once we get that out the way in person, I'm not asking my partners if they have near me, like, all right, cool. I'm actually been like, hey, well, let me see what you got going on. Let me see some results, yesterday, of test you took yesterday, today, things like that, and the results, and I'm sharing mine. And then I'm going a step further in making sure when I go in, everybody wants to go in with their annual test or their every 6-month test for cholesterol and diabetes, talking about they got everything. Ask your doctor if you're being screened for syphilis, for gonorrhea, HIV, things like that. And if you're having sex with your mouth or your rectum or anus, vagina, penis, wherever you're having the sex, that's where you need to get screened, right? I can't walk around talking I gave some blood tests and I didn't know I had, gonorrhea in the rectum. I can't, that's not what you want to do, right? And I want to make a plea to providers. Dr. Pete, you've heard me say this all the time. What really, really gets me going is when people who identify as women or cis women come in as patients, and then I'm talking with another provider. I'm like, well, what are her anal test results? And they didn't test her. Women have anal sex too, okay, right? And they doing it with somebody, so it needs to be screened. So this is an opportunity to talk real about what's going on with ourselves in our homes and things like that. And if you don't want to talk about it openly, talk about it with a provider you trust, and definitely talk about it with your partner, right? So that's the opportunity there. Speaking of opportunity, Dr. P, why you gotta laugh at me?
No, because it's just I know how passionate you are, and I've heard you say this. I've heard you say it 100 times. Like, you're really passionate, and it's true. I think there are some providers that are less comfortable treating reproductive health type of things, and so I think we all have our comfort level, and so it's just some that are not. They haven't worked. They work in sort of traditional practices of either internal medicine, family medicine, or whatever, and they just don't. Number one, they don't have I would say the resources, and two, they haven't trained in those areas enough to have the necessary swabs for a rectal swab or oral swab and things like that. So this is but it's cool. I love it when us as providers can help each other, teach each other. When we go to these conferences to sort of learn, and when we get these rates that are going up the way they are, is we really can't afford to someone in rural Illinois not to be doing testing in all 3 sites, all 4 sites. So we really do need for everybody to ramp up and kind of ante up, if you will, and just say, hey, I'm not used to what should we be testing? Because people used to just, I run a blood test. Well, the blood test is going to get syphilis and, let's say, HIV, but it won't get the other STIs, chlamydia, gonorrhea. So it's important that we as providers just, kind of put our egos aside.
Well,
and
Pete, I just want to, I want to say one quick thing to Pete real quick. Pete, I love your answer. Yeah. It was so diplomatic. Let me start with that disclaimer, but let me say this. Sex has been around a long time. True. So a lot of these doctors who have this so-called traditional way, as you said it, they're just not a part of reality. This is why you have to have a real relationship with your physician. Right. As we know, I don't tell my own business, but I'm going to share this so people will know. That's why when certain doctors do retire, it is as if it is just a hole in the medical practice that happens, because Dr. Miller had no problems with asking you those questions when you went to see him. And I had to remember, I'm like, Deke, I know you ain't asking me about that. He was like, girl, I need to know if you've been doing X, Y, and Z. So not only was it hard to tell the doctor But then I'm looking at, I know this man personally. This is Deacon Miller at church. How I'm going to tell him that, yeah, I do that. Or no, I don't do that. But I said it because he had no problems asking the questions. And I wasn't the only patient who he asked that question to. He asked those questions to the patients. And one thing I loved about Dr. Miller's practice, hell with the 15 minutes with a patient, he was going to spend the allotted amount of time with his patients that he needed to ensure that his patients got what they got. When you walked in Dr. Miller's office, the first set of questions he asked you was your series about depression. Even when I was like, well, Dr. Miller, I don't want to talk about that right now. He said, well, that's fine, but I just need you to answer these questions for me so we can move on to why you here today. Looking at him like, and then he would ask you those series of sex questions. He was not going to forget them. So when we talk about patients or physicians who had these traditional type practices, I would say that Dr. Miller came from a traditional type practice, but he was just going to ask the questions because he knew that sex was still going on, because that's how he got here. So I love your diplomatic answer, because I know you asked those sex questions, but I'm not going to take up for these other doctors who don't ask the questions. And then you wonder why our patients have the problems they have. Not even when it comes to just sex. If we took sex off the table, we would have less problems with hypertension and diabetes if our physicians ask the questions. Do you eat 10 paydays a day? Well, if you eat 10 paydays a day, then I'm going to take your A1C3 because I know it's got to be off the chain, or even explain what that was about. I think when physicians become physicians, they need to hold to the oath and ask. It's just you guys in the room. That's why I think it's so important to see somebody who understands who you are.
But there's
I say all the time, and when Pete, I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I say this all the time, and when Pete and I was here alone, when we first started this, when we were here by ourselves, I said, I can't see anybody who doesn't understand why I eat turnips and bottoms. If you don't understand why I eat turnips and bottoms, then you are not the physician for me. If you don't understand why I like okra and I'm a cheat and have a little fried chicken every now and then, I can't see you because you don't understand. If I can't sit here and have a candid conversation with you about what's really going on with me, then this isn't the right doctor for me to see. I also remind our viewers all the time, when you go to the doctor, you go there and you shut up and you don't want to share what's going on. That's the wrong place to do that. This is your opportunity to have conversations. Make notes. And when you go to the doctor, read down those notes. I'm a doctor's worst nightmare. I go in and I start, hold on, here's the problem. But before you start talking, let me tell you what's going on. And then I was itching on this side of the arm, and then I can't get my arm over my head. I'm going to ask you everything that's been going on. I'm going to tell you everything so you can put all of this together and tell me what is really going on with me. Because nobody knows you like you know you. You know when something is not right with you. You know. And you need to tell them that you know. Go ahead, Antonio. I'm sorry.
I was just going to add another layer to that, and I do understand what you're saying. I totally agree. But I also look at the perspective also in today's world where doctors are under so much pressure from insurance companies to get in there, be done with, especially if you're part of a group. If you're part of a medical group and you're trying to see as many patients, and that 15 to 20 minutes is allotted. So it's layered. The structural, deterrents to health are layered. What we have to continue to do with platforms like this, which is amazing, is to empower our listenership and our viewers who are listening. You are empowered to ask the questions. You're empowered to say to your doctor, I need this. A lot of patients don't feel, like you just said, Nikki, they don't go in there and ask the question. They be quiet because they don't feel empowered. They don't feel that I can tell the doctor this, or I can question the doctor. And doctors, again, there's a lot going on. We send out health alerts, not just the health department on the local level, but IDPH as well. It's hard to get them to look at the health alerts if they've got patients they're seeing, medical reports they've got to do, bills that have to be paid. So it's a layered situation, and we have to, it starts with the patient. I'm with Dr. Maya on, I've never had sex with him since I've been having sex since I was 16. I've never had sex with anybody that I did not know what was going on with them, period. I'm turning lights on. And when I do my workshops to talk to women and men, especially women though, because you all fall for this okie doke of, I can't wear a condom, baby, I'm too big. If y'all don't hear nothing else I say in the viewership, one size fits all. Condoms work. And a condom will fit anybody. They just have to put it on. You have to stretch it a little bit and roll it down. Ain't nobody bigger than 14 inches. It'll fit. Trust me, I can put it on my arm. It'll work.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? They say what now?
You know, there are some men who, you know, I need the Magnum condom, and that's a marketing tool for the manufacturing companies. One size will fit all, and you have a lot of men who say, "I'm too big for a condom." No, you're not. You're really not. I have big grown men, and I do a demonstration with muscular arms, and I make them stretch their arm out, and I can take the condom from the fist all the way up to their shoulder without it ripping. Now, if anything is bigger than that, you need to burp it and go home. Don't touch it. But my point is, we have to empower people with information and knowledge and get rid of these misnomers that condoms don't work and everybody can't wear a condom. Some people are allergic to latex. There are options out there. But what I want us to do, like Dr. Maya, talk to your partner. The greatest thing that the Almighty or universe, whoever you want to believe in, but for me, God has given us is life. And when you lay with someone or you give that yourself to someone, that's your life you're giving to someone. How dare us give that life to someone and not know about them and they don't know about us? We've got to start thinking a little more about who we are and valuing what we're giving to someone and how we're just putting that out there. We've got to be a little more, and I'm not judging. I'm not saying don't have oral sex, don't sleep. You can have as many one night stands as you want, I think. Just
even if you want to give it to them and take it back.
I don't know how you're going to do that, but okay. But, you know, just be a little more mindful about what's going on with them. Turn the lights on. It's very beautiful and romantic with the lights off, but that's a luxury we can't afford. Turn the lights on, because some things you can see that they may not even know about. That he may think that rash is from his laundry detergent when it turns out to be secondary syphilis. Okay, Michelle.
You can always turn the lights off later. Leave them on.
You can turn them off. Baby, let me tell you what the lady told me. She said she has those. I keep the lights on because he knew I had these rolls when he stepped to me. I'm not worried about no rolls.
Go ahead, Joe. Joe Harrington?
Oh, I was just going to pick up on something that you said, Nikki. You said that you frame your questions before you go to the doctor. You should be thinking about what to ask the doctor before you get in the office. You know, once you're in the office, it's a different kind of arrangement, and the power sort of shifts. I'm reminded that healthcare in this country is fee for service. Doctors are providing a service to you. I'm not going to compare them to mechanics, but if you went to a mechanic and you would talk to them about your car, you would ask questions. Ask the doctor questions. It's no different. You're getting a service. You have not only an opportunity, but you're supposed to ask questions. And if you don't ask questions, the doctor will just tell you certain things and assume that you understood and left. So think about the questions you may want to ask before you get there. And there's a better chance you'll ask those questions than waiting till you're in the room to start thinking about what questions should I be asking the doctor. Because a lot of times once you get there, particularly if he's giving you bad news, you're overwhelmed by the bad news and you can't frame a question.
I agree with
and
that.
Get in the habit of talking to your doctor. Have conversations with whether you want to talk to him or not. Talk to him every time. Then you'll become comfortable, and then you'll be able to talk to them. Have a conversation.
Yeah,
my doctor is one of my best friends.
Yeah, I agree with that, Joe. And like Antonio said, recognizing that there are restraints in the timeline, in the time that we have to see each patient, instead of sort of fighting the system, work with the system. So I always say, and I have my medical assistant go in, and no matter what is going on, I say, you know, what 2 subjects would you like to talk to the doctor today about? So you should dictate that. You pick 2. If you got more than 2, save those for later. Make another appointment for that, because I'm telling you, it doesn't do you any good to list to me 8 things when I can only do 2 and do 2 well. So you want me to just skate through all 8 of them and you're going to leave there unhappy? Or you want to do 2 really well? So I would say pick 2 that you need to take care of, and then pick another 2 for the next visit, then another 2 for the next visit. So I think that's always helpful. And honestly, it would provide your provider with some comfort too, knowing that they don't have the pressure of getting through stuff that they really know that they can't get through in 15 minutes.
I just wanted to, Nikki was talking about, asking the patient. If you never ask the patient the question, you never get. Most of the time, you don't get an answer, and so it's required. As you're preparing as a physician to see the patient, your prep should include number one, you have some idea why the patient is there, so you have information. There's information you want to collect about that, but also you want to get to know more about the patient. The more you see the patient, the more you should know. But if you don't ask question, if you only take the information that the patient give without ever asking question, then you're limited to the data that you're going to be collected. So it's important that you think about what's going on with that patient and begin to ask those questions. And as you get to know people, you also get to understand their level of comfort. They feel comfortable with certain things, but may not feel very comfortable introducing other things. They generally, with my understanding was that most patients eventually will feel comfortable talking to you about anything once they get to know that this is something I need to talk about. This is not something that I have to worry about being judged about, and that this is when I talk about this is something that's going to serve as a way to benefit and to help me in the long run. And so, as long as people understand that, then there's not a problem. As long as they're aware that you're not trying to do something that's going to harm them or something that's going to be serve as a way for you to judge them inappropriately. So people will tell you will give you the answers, but you must ask the question in order to be able to get the answer. If you don't ask the question about whether or not they're sexually active, if you don't ask the question about if they've had an STD, then oftentimes you won't get the answer.
Well, I think
Dr. Miller, you're talking about building relationships. That's the patient-physician relationship. Build a relationship.
That's it.
I think our next question is a great segue into removing the stigmas, because our next question says, Dr. Pete, when you take a syphilis test and if it's positive and they do this contact tracing, do they use your name? Does the person know it was you?
No, typically we have what we call unique identifiers, and there's usually 2 unique identifiers that we use. And this is a way to adhere to HIPAA, which is a system to protect your health information. And so typically when you have these tests done, and if there's a test that's positive and they want to know if you have received treatment and who you have had sex with, that's how they do these contact tracing. And again, they use these unique identifiers, not a name, because the name can it can violate HIPAA. So that's typically how that's done. I don't know if any of my colleagues
I think Antonio might have a different answer.
Well, yeah.
Come on.
I'm chomping at the bit. The unique identifiers, he's absolutely correct. Those are used actually internally for reporting, for provider and for reporting purposes. But when I would go out, when I get the name of someone, Antonio King, and he's a syphilis contracted when he was with Dr. Harrington, we go to that person's home. And when I get information, if they give me their partner's name that they were with 3 days ago or whatever, I go to that person. I do not use any name. What the spiel that we say is someone within the past 12 months or within your past has contracted syphilis, and they gave us your name as one of their sexual partners. When was the last time you had sex? And can we talk to you about coming into the clinic to get preventatively treated for syphilis? You have been exposed to syphilis or gonorrhea, chlamydia, whatever it is. For a contact tracing, no names, no addresses, nothing is ever used to identify the party that sent us to that directed us to that particular sex partner. It's a very successful, not very, but it's a success. It's as successful as individuals will allow us to be. But it's a successful methodology to it, because once you talk to individuals, and we do, as Dr. P stated, we start out saying everything that we talk about is confidential. meaning the only individuals who will know anything about our conversation are on a need-to-know basis at the health department or anywhere else that we are reporting this to another health department. Your doctor will not know the information you're giving me concerning who you're having sex with and what type of sex you've had, because we go into a lot of detail to find out how you were exposed and what stage you probably are in your particular point of transmitting the infection. So no one's name is used, no identifiers, no descriptions. Now we ask you, what is your sex partner's name and how can we contact them? And we ask for a description, because sometimes we're able to identify. I've gone to homes and, it could be a brother who knows the brother's name, date of birth. And if I ask for him, he could be, I've been tricked. They've almost tried to trick me before, twins and stuff. But if there's an identifier, you can always say, you're not who I'm looking for, dude. Is there someone else by this name here? And so it's very confidential. HIPAA is very serious in this country, and the providers take it serious, and disease intervention contact tracers take it very serious.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that they do the same thing with TB. It's an infectious disease. And during COVID, you were asked to let people know if you had COVID. If you were in a room with people, if you were with your family, you have an obligation to let them know that now you have COVID and they may want to get tested. That's your own personal responsibility.
So, Joe, since you have the mic, how do we remove the stigma of HIV and hepatitis? Or how do we remove those stigmas? How do we remove the stigmas of STIs, period?
Conversations like this. That's the only, that's the only way we're going to get rid of stigmas, to talk about it and talk about it openly. As long as it's something that people push under the rug, it'll stay under the rug. But once it's out in the open and people talk about it, then we'll probably reduce the stigma. But it's something that's very hard to do, because if it were possible, we should have been able to do it by now. But some of the things that you're talking about, it's not like we just learned about these things a couple of years ago. There's been there's not the same stigma that there used to be, but there's still stigma. Not only on a population, but individuals feel stigmatized. I don't want to be known as the person that has that, so I can't tell other people. So I really want to, but I can't do it, because that would change the way they think about me. So that's really hard to change.
Well, because we have such trepidation and apprehension about talking about sex. I think Dr. Meyer covered it very well. Everyone is here because someone else had sex. And when we remove this whole this whole ridiculous thought process of shaming sex, shaming the types of sex, whether, then we can get an understanding for the individuals on how to move forward to protecting their sexual health. Until we get the stigma and the shame away from sex, it's going to continue to be hard to have people to think about their sexual health. And I'm sorry, Dr. Mason, I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, we're talking about culture and customs. Those are hard to change.
No, I was just going to say that this work is so, let me just say this, the work that the device, the people who trace these people and try and trace them down, there's almost like the opposite end of it. You have people sharing all kinds of things on social media with what they did, who they did it with, and all kind of stuff. Not that
while they're naked doing it. While they're naked.
It's almost an interesting paradox that on one hand we've got to have this conversation, which is important to provide privacy for people, but the other side we've got the other folks that are just putting information all over the place. Not to mention that many times people are having these things in group settings where nobody's anonymous with anybody else other than they may not know who they are. And I just think it's a really important thing that we have the people that go out, and this is hard work, going out getting this information, and even harder work to go and talk to people because people don't want to talk to you. And you'd be surprised at some of the reactions, and I'll let Antonio talk about that, some of the reaction that you get. And when we did the big gonorrhea and chlamydia outreach at the health department, where we actually gave tickets away to a WGCI concert for people to come in. And it was interesting. People incentivized properly will give, will bring in and do more in terms of making sure they get their condoms, but more importantly, making sure that they know that this is why we're doing this. And they all got a lecture on gonorrhea and chlamydia and all that sort of stuff. But it's really important. It really, really, really is. And Antonio, thank you so much. I know I spoke to you earlier today about doing this, but these are conversations we definitely need to have. And we need to have them in, back during the HIV days, we had them in little groups of guys and everybody else. And now we don't even talk about it as much as we need to with young adults. And I'll just say that when we talk about what young people are doing, I've seen in my own circle of family where I was like, man, you need to calm down. He said, it's not me. It's not me. Girls are being as aggressive as boys in terms of doing things. And he showed me a picture that I'm not going to repeat on this air, but the kind of messaging they're doing among themselves.
Because our young people they're very sexually fluid. Many of, not all of them, I would not generalize, are very sexually fluid today. So you do have in partners who want to do everything. They want to do, and when they're trying they're pansexual, they're trying all kind of sexes, they're pegging, they're doing a lot of things, but we are not keeping up with trying to give them information on how to maintain their sexual health, how to protect themselves, because we are still, and I say we meaning generations, are still stigmatized about talking about sex to someone, as if we didn't have sex. We don't have sex. And we can't talk to people and shame them at the same time. We can't judge them and say, why are you doing that? As opposed to giving them a way to do it healthily, in a healthy manner or in a protective manner. Validating their right to do what they want with their bodies, but also giving them the ways to protect themselves as well.
Sandra says, Sandra says, amen, Antonio. But sex has been fluid all the time. How do you think we had the baby boom? Go ahead, Dr. Miller.
Yeah, we've had these conversations about uh, discussions and talking and people opening up about various types of medical conditions, and so the more we talk about it, and in places where people uh, maybe not so traditionally talk about these things, so it become a little bit more open, I think the better off that we're going to be. I remember back in the day, I think Dr. Mason may have been involved in some of these things where, went to the barber shops and talked to men about prostate cancer, and conversations start flowing. People start asking questions, and they learned, and they went and got checked. And so I think the same thing has to happen with whatever the topic is. We have to make certain that we're having conversation. It has to be in settings where people can sort of begin to see it's all right to open up. It's all right to hear this. And it's all right to get involved with each other in terms of discussion, because we're talking about health. We're not just talking about sex. We're talking about your health, and that is that's a very important thing. So I think that these forums that we're having, plus I think we got to spread this a little bit more in terms of getting to the people. One of the first questions that I asked Antonio about was, when he with the data that he was reporting about the age group. So if we are seeing something that is happening in people of a certain age, it becomes important that we talk to that age, that the people in that age group, because those are problems that are existing in that age group, problems that need to be addressed in that age group. So we need to know that, and so that we can again make certain that we get the conversation going, and that people don't feel that they're being judged, that they're being looked upon in a way that is unbecoming. But again, make certain that they understand this is about health. That's it. It's about health. We're not concerned about these things otherwise.
So, Doug, why do you think no one wants to have the sex conversation?
So I think lots of it has to do with how you're raised. If you're raised in a home when your parents don't have a discussion with you and somebody shames you for having sexual thoughts and ideas, it kind of creates that tight personality, that tight manner, and that difficulty in asking and talking about that questions. Now, if the opposite is also true, if you're raised in a household that's hypersexual, you may not be able to dialogue and discuss with other people who were raised with a more modest or humble way of dealing with sex. So I think it really takes all kinds of experiences to be able to be comfortable asking the questions, being comfortable with yourself, and being comfortable with the answers that you're going to get. Because sometimes you're going to get a question and you can ask a question and you might be surprised by the answer. It may not fit with what you were taught or what you learned in church, but that might be the right answer that person's going to give you about their lives and their community. So you have to be able to be open-minded about that as well. So that'd be my speculation about it.
Oh, church.
So, want to say hey to all of our friends over at the Core Center who is watching. I'm not going to forget that you guys are here. So, thank you so very much. Want to say hey to everybody over at the VA who is watching just as well. We also have an anonymous statement, and this is going to be our last statement of the evening. And the statement from our anonymous viewer says, I love these conversations, and this is simply great. Thank you, Congressman Davis and Nikki and the esteemed doctors for always sharing needed information. I know you didn't ask me my opinion of why I think people are afraid to have the sex conversation, but please, Miss Nikki, let me share. I think people are afraid of the sex conversation because sex brings pleasure, and no one wants to talk about pleasure. Everyone is ashamed of pleasure or knowing that they've been pleased in whatever form that they use. So they would rather not have the conversation at all. One day, maybe we should talk about mental health and pleasure and see if people just don't like being happy. Thank you so much for that. I want to say hey to Dorothy Murray, who is here. And she says, good evening to everyone. Pamela Dominguez. Hey, Pam. She is here and she says, I believe that as I've thought for many years, education and STI prevention should have abstinence as a health issue. Very good. Valdemir Talley. Hey, Chief Talley. He's here and he says, great conversation. Most people I know go to a family practitioner. They go to a family practitioner. Do you suggest going to an internist over an FP? All right. Dr. Miller, Dr. Graham, do you go to a family practitioner or do you go to an internist? Does it matter? What do you do?
I don't think that is that big. I don't think that makes that much of a difference. I think it's, I think whether you're an internist or a family practitioner, you still should know the question. You still should understand the disease processes, and also, so whether you're training, you by being if you're a family practitioner, it's probably you're going to come in contact with multiple age groups. So you're probably going to be able to reach down and touch those young people and ask them the question that they need to be asked and teach them some of the things that they need to know at an earlier age than probably because they don't usually see internists, until they become adults. So whether the person is seeing an internist or a family practitioner, I don't think that makes a difference in terms of the quality of the care. The quality of the care, is the same, and you should be able to. They both should be able to treat the patient appropriately.
All right. Well, one person says, wow, I didn't even know it was a difference. I thought an internist and a family practitioner was the same. Maybe we should have a brief conversation about what each doctor's title really means. I think we can throw that in for a 15-minute segment. And I think we could clear a lot of things up. Tina Hammond is here and she says, facts. We must talk about it. This is not the 1940s. So I got you, Tina. You are absolutely right. We have got to have a conversation about it. Well, as always, I know you guys hate to hear when I say this, but it's our time. So before we go, we're going to have our until next Mondays. Well, Joe, what's your until next Monday?
I'm off mute. I was thinking about it. I'm going to quote Benjamin Franklin from 1736.
All right.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you know better, do better.
All right, Joe says, if you know better, do better. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, Doug, you're until next Monday.
Well, I'd like to segue with Joseph. He said something like when you go to the doctor's office and you start talking, the dynamic changes. I agree with him 100%. That's why I think if you go into the questions, write them down or come in with it on your cell phone and then write down the answers. Because I'll guarantee you, he's going to say something, or she's going to say something. You're going to get home and your friend, you're sitting there, that's going to say, what did they say? And it may be hard to remember. So writing things down and asking questions is a good way to go.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Mason, Doug says, go to the doctor with questions. And Joe says, when you know better, do better. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. What's your until next Monday, Dr. Mason?
Everybody having unprotected sex with anybody leaves themselves open to get something. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And so don't make this more complicated than it is. Everybody that has unprotected sex with anybody is opening themselves up to be able to get a disease they didn't walk in there with.
Well, Bishop, we're going to pass that plate because you just preached a sermon. Well, Dr. Miller, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. When you know better, do better. Also, Dr. Miller, go to the doctor with questions, and guess what? Everybody, anybody, unprotected, go get something. What's your until next Monday?
Well, I think we all like sex, and that's good. But the thing is that we have to make certain that we're not only getting what we went for, but we're not getting the things that we don't want to get. Okay. We want to have the pleasure, but we don't need to come out with a disease. So it's important that if we know that we have a disease, that we don't spread that. Spread love, spread joy, but don't spread disease.
All right. Well, Antonio, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Go to the doctor with questions. Everybody, anybody, unprotected is going to have something. Mm-hmm. And don't go get nothing you didn't come with. What's your until next Monday, Antonio?
So my until I see you again, because I'm not here next Monday. I appreciate just being here. And I thank you so much for allowing me into the space. I would piggyback on that with Dr. Miller and say, your sexual health is your responsibility.
Outstanding. Just want to remind you all to join us on Saturday. That's Saturday, July 13th, July 20th, July 27th, and Friday, August 2nd. Join us at Chicago City Colleges over at the Malcolm X Learning Center for a West Side resource. We will be having resources every Saturday. And of course, we're going to have someone there having a conversation about syphilis and gonorrhea, and also giving out information where you can go and be tested at. And there may be some gifts that come along with it just as well. So join us each Saturday this month and on Friday, August 2nd at Malcolm X at the West Side Learning Center. If you are a business or a provider or a service provider and you would like to have a free vendor table there, please contact me in the office at 773-533-7520. Once again, that number is 773-533-7520 in the office of Congressman Danny K. Davis. Just give our office a call, ask for me. And if you would like a free vendor table to be one of our resources, and the resources are community-based, whatever it is, we'll have City Key there to make sure that you have IDs and things of that sort just as well. There's going to be resources there for food pantries. There's going to be resources there for bill assistance. So just make sure you join us at the West Side Learning Center. That's Malcolm X West Side Learning Center, not the main campus, but the Learning Center that's located in the 4100 block of Madison. There will be some information posted about it shortly. And then also don't forget our 43rd year back to school picnic parade and World Health Day. That will be Saturday, August 31st. The date had to change because of the NC that will be here. So we will be having our picnic parade and World Health Day on August 31st. That's Saturday, August 31st. And as always, to all of you, we'll see you next Monday. If you have any questions, comments, or there's a hot topic that you want to talk about, remember, just always contact us. We are here for the community. This service is for information only, but make sure that the information is verified, because we verify all of our information that we share here with our esteemed panel of physicians and professionals who are here to help not just move your life forward, but to save it. Thank you, and see you on next Monday. Bye now.